I'm Greg Otto. For those that missed the earlier introduction, I'm with Clark Pacific. I'm a project executive within the emerging markets team and really the product owner for our housing sector. And so I'm going to talk about, effectively the development of that product as a go forward. So, what are the problems we're initially trying to solve? Industry productivity has been stalled and in many cases has declined. Construction costs have soared while quality has flatlined. Project delivery schedules are increasingly unpredictable. Industry fragmentation is impacting innovation. The industry really needs some significant innovation to change the prior trends. Obviously, the environmental impact of traditional construction is really pretty unacceptable. A majority of the waste as a percentage of overall human activity is really aligned to construction activities. Talent, this is probably one of the more controversial, but there's a increasing competition for the best and brightest. And as an overall statement, the construction industry, because of its inability to change, we're losing out on that talent. And then finally, and particularly within the housing space, and we're really talking about housing across all sectors. So, whether you're talking student housing, multifamily housing, affordability is a critical concern and it has really significant social consequences. So these are the things we're trying to address. And then, the McKinsey report about productivity, which was issued in 2015, that's a long time ago, 7 years ago. You realize that, there's still quite a bit of opportunity in what they had given us. And there's really 7 opportunities that McKinsey recognized and really saw as a means to, significantly improve construction productivity. One was reshape building regulations, rework contracts, rethink how we design, improve procurement in the supply chain, improve on-site execution, integrate technology and explore innovation, and reskill workers. In the first, it's hard from the contractor side to impact regulation, but to a degree, I think the story I'm going to share with you, you're going to see how we are nudging that along in terms of delivery. Certainly, we're going to try to rework contracts and how we think about contracting. 3, we're definitely going to challenge how we do design. And then this story is very much about the procurement and the supply chain and improving the on-site execution. And we're going to leverage some heavy technology and ultimately explore some innovation. And then the last one is, we're trying to move construction from the field to the factory. So we're trying to really take advantage of all of that. And so I'll tell that story and where we are in terms of that development. So this is kind of the story of Clark Pacific. Clark Pacific started in 1963, really started as architectural precast. And then, it slowly but surely evolved into the super subcontractor. And you'll see some pretty significant logos there in the middle, in which archi-structural systems were the discussion point on mega projects. And so you see that rise. And then ultimately, the ambition here is to go to a world-class manufacturer of prefabricated building systems. And that is the, Infinite Facade, Clark Park, the office building that John Moll just presented on, and then our housing solution. In that middle, that super subcontractor, we learned a lot of things, right? We built off of the legacy from 1963 to 2003. We learned a lot of things when we started winning big projects. One, it created a lot of growth, but in big projects, it creates fake backlog. And so we ended up with a lot of volatility. And we were really striving for a more sustainable business. One, because factories are land-based, they're geographically positioned, and you don't want to be hiring and firing in your own backyard, right? The first time you do it, you might get that crew to come back, but the third time you do it, it's like, I'm off to better things. And so we wanted to avoid that volatility. The other thing about growth is the innovation diffusion piece, and that's the wave you see on the bottom. Every step of the way, there's knowledge built, right? And to the degree that it comes and goes, because you have a lot of volatility in your business, that's very expensive. We didn't want to continually lose that knowledge. And so really moving into a product-based mindset and finding a lot more consistency around manufacturing really was an important direction to go. So I want to talk about, establishing a product vision, the objectives, the how, the design criteria. And really, when we talk about design criteria, it's about the value creation, and then really about an evolving product feature set. So in the first case, we're really talking about transformational housing. And what's transformational about it? We really want to attack first cost. We want better alignment, right? One of the things that you start to learn when you go out to the marketplace and you actually talk to the users, the housing product being delivered does not align with their needs. There is a lot of backward regressive ways in which the market evaluates the market as a go forward. So it looks backwards and it tries to mimic the backward. And so what you get is a lot of regurgitation of the same thing. And obviously that's not cost effective and again, not aligned in terms of the creature features and the way people want to use housing stock. And then finally, the environmental impact. The objectives, the how to get there is really the importance of the market research and aligned manufactured kit of parts around a housing product, right? And really focused on what does a user want. And I'll give you an example, with COVID happening, right? People are now working from home and it's changed how people want to occupy space and what they need in occupying their space to be able to be productive, living and working out of their home. That's just one example in which change is demanded, but are we really addressing that as a product? The next one is industrialized construction, and I'm really going to talk about manufacturing. And then the final piece is a modern value-driven delivery model. It's really important that you can do offsite, you can manufacture, but if you can't put the product in the field and deliver a finished product, you really have a high potential for defeat. And then the design criteria really is, effectively the evolving feature set, but these are the criteria by which you're going to evaluate, right? The value creation. And then the last piece is really the evolving feature set, meaning we're going to version the product as a go forward. And that's important because you want to take steps at a time, manageable steps at a time. We wanted to establish a scope of prefabrication. And, one of the starting points when I came on board was we really wanted a volumetric. And a volumetric, on this piece requires a high degree of standardization. And what this graph is really showing you is, you want to be able to work across pure customization all the way to pure standardization. And you want the flexibility to adapt. So you want to try to maximize standardization, but in any project, you're going to have some level of customization because of the specifics of the project. And so you really want a suite or a toolkit of prefabrication, and you can piece it together and really do it in a modular concept kind of way that the pieces and parts assemble very much like a Lego set. So that's what this is really talking about. And in that, we want to create a product ecosystem, which is the vision. And right now, Clark Pacific is doing precast floors, precast vertical. To that, we've added cold form wall panels. We have the ability to do steel frames, windows, architectural precast, and stairs. we can start to then assemble these pieces, and we can create facade panels, we can create wall panels, and then floor panels. And to that, then we can start to add the next layer, which is actually bringing our partners in, right? And so exploring alternative vertical systems, a supplier network of add value, say from an MEP point of view. You can go to racked MEP, bolt-on components to the volumetric, such as balconies, et cetera, and build that inventory of product up in elevator hoistways, et cetera. And each time we're looking through partnerships, and very much how Boeing operates, we're an integrator. So working from the idea that there are others with far sophisticated solution, we want to work in partnerships to build this inventory, this product ecosystem to ultimately deliver the transformational housing. And product development really is about usable product increment, right? We want to evolve people, processes, and tools, and really align it to the market and product, or align it to the market and ultimately the product. And so this is the story of, we started really with Munger Gen 0, and it was a prefabricated exterior. And then Comstock came along, and it was prefab structure. Then Escondido Village, which is Stanford, came, and it was really an archi-structural solution, relying heavily on integrated facade, integrated glazing, and then really designed from a production flow point of view to deliver the project in an expedited way in the field. And then the last one is, we're now working on a Gen 3, which is really a volumetric solution. And I'll ultimately get to a story. At one point, Clark Pacific had a volumetric and just couldn't find a way to move it forward. And so we're actually digging up a bit of history in coming to our fourth state. So leveraging design thinking is really the first and foremost. We want to be a market-aligned product. And so we want to really direct research. We want the user's understandings. We want to understand what their need is, and we want to align it, right? We want to learn it. And then we're going to prototype that, and we're going to leverage Agile to work through sprints to ultimately prototype and version, ultimately to a working implementation. And it's super important to leverage this, because you got a lot of variables in play. And then the idea of incremental work, diverge, emerge, and converge. This is really an innovation log in which we're capturing all of our ideas, right? What are all of the possibilities that we might want to explore? So identifying the innovation, and then we want to verify the alignment, right? Does it actually fit the vision? Does it actually fit our design criteria? And then we'll go through a process of research and analysis, and that's the prototyping and the A3s to really align it. And then we're going to qualify that, right? Go back to the vision. Does it really align with our vision? Does it satisfy the design criteria, ultimately leading us to implementation? And then prototyping, testing, evaluation, and implementation, working through the A3, and this idea of continuously going through this Scrum, ideate, prototype, test, evaluate, redefine, and do it again, right? And here you're seeing, an A3 at the bottom. You're seeing micro mock-ups, really looking at different wall assemblies. And we're testing it from a cost point of view, but we're also testing it from an actual manufacturing. What is the time demand to produce that product? And then ultimately we can full scale prototype that. And then you can see you're actually designing the product around flow and throughput through the factory. And one of the very first products out of this, if you start thinking about a modular concept, is really the wall panel. And here you can see a wall panel laid down with integrated electrical UL assemblies. So you see the boxes, the spreader bar, and the MC cable. And again, we want to rely on partnerships and their expertise. And so this is coming from an electrical partner. And then on the right, you're seeing plumbing inserts. And those plumbing inserts insert into the wall. And the logic here is, we want sub-assemblies, manufactured components that come to us where they're already sophisticated, and then we just have to integrate it into our assembly. So this is really our very first product. And the idea here really is we're just continuously adding value through integration. And then future development, right, is looking at drywall substitute, head of wall, architectural enclosure, and further smart tech integration. And again, really talking about building expertise through partnerships. On the right, you see what an integrated plumbing wall insert would look like. So this is what we would receive at factory, and the kind of sophistication that we're putting or relying on from our manufacturing MEP partners to bring that expertise, that ownership of knowledge, and then being able to integrate it into a wall panel. And then this is just a video of how a wall panel comes together. Plumbing inserts. So you see the wall panel, it's integrated. It's now fully plumbed. You see a shaft, you have precast plank laid down. Wall panels are starting to get laid out, and you can start to see how we can start to build up value. And John Moll hinted to this, is that, by adding all the other disciplines, you constantly are increasing the value of the product. And then you get a volumetric, and you can see how the plumbing connections are made overhead. And the plumbing connections under plank. And this is one of our very first modulars. It was a study, a missed opportunity, but a study of a volumetric. And again, you can see the precast plank, the cold form steel walls, the integration of electrical UL listed assemblies, and then an interior shot. And again, the idea in the volumetric, and again, the importance of choosing the right prefabrication strategy is how complete do you actually want the product. And in the case of a volumetric, you really want to push it over the 80% complete, if not more, because you don't want work in field to have to track back through something that you've actually manufactured. Then the next piece is really about information flow. We needed transparency across all information. We need to have reliable and durable decision-making, super important. And manufacturing requires EBOM and an MBOM. An MBOM is how it gets assembled, and an EBOM is how it is designed. What are the parts, the assemblies? It's basically the bill of materials. And so we mapped the modular project delivery sequence. So we took a standard project and then mapped how modular makes it different. And on the right is effectively the scrum to break down all of the players within a project, a theoretical project, and what is the information flow that's required to deliver that project, and how do you arrive at an EBOM and an MBOM, right? And that is critically important because you're rushing to be able to manufacture volumetrics. And then clear definition, clear demarcation, and alignment of what are you going to do in factory and what are you going to do in field. You have to have clear delineation in that, and be able to tie them together. For example, you do not want to be ordering doors for a pod that with the expectation that the entire project is going to have the same door type, but at the end, somehow that purchasing gets bifurcated. And so you end up with two different doors on the project, right? You need to have a comprehensive plan to deliver that. You have and that's the definition. You have to clearly demark what factory and field is, and then you need to get that aligned. And then the next big step in this evolution was really changing the delivery model. We've all seen this curve, right? The cost of design changes, the later in the project goes up, the ability to impact project outcomes goes down with time. Typical design efforts flow along that line in around construction documentation. But to do a prefabricated scope or a manufactured scope, we got to shift that. We got to shift the design effort towards concept. And in doing that, we're enabling the process to commit to prefabrication. And that is a big ask, but it's an important piece if you want to unlock the value of manufacturing. Obviously, you're trying to speed up the project. And in speeding up the project and committing to prefabrication, we're really trying to get that fabrication knowledge into the project very early. And so what normally happens on a project in shop drawings is the how things get done actually gets baked well after construction documents. We're actually moving that forward. And that is designed for manufacturing, logistics, and assembly. And what's important here is, the why, the what, which is typically the linear arrangement of moving from concept to construction documents, and then ultimately the shop drawings that fabricate it. We want to move that fabrication intelligence forward. And that's really important in pressing the button to commit to prefabrication. And then the next piece is really, the alignment of factory and field, having good delineation there, and ultimately working towards an integrated domain. So the management of logistics, there's really 5 key roles. One is first, clarifying that interface between factory and field, right? The next one is, once you have clarity on that, you want to improve and make much more effective your supply chain. And then you want to take a look at your site, your construction site, and really look to optimize the logistics, the site movements of a construction site. And then once you can start to look at what's going on site, you can see what your flow is at site and where you have bottlenecks. Those are your opportunities to transfer activities from site to the supply chain, i.e. to manufacturing. And when you get past 4 and you get to that place of managing the supply chain and site as an integrated domain, you really have opportunity to hit all of the issues that we're trying to change. And that's the ideal state. I hinted, Clark Pacific sometime in the past, and I believe it's in the 60s, was producing volumetrics. What you're seeing there is a volumetric product that was done with Forest City Dillon on precast plank. And that's effectively that solution. And those projects are all up and down the state of California. But as the market went, it happened, and then it died, and then it was lost. And so really the idea of bringing it back. And then here is really looking at the factory. The factory producing volumetrics is divided into 5 zones. And again, we want to pull from demand. We want to minimize the amount of work in progress. So, again, looking to site, looking to see this as an integrated domain, and actually manufacturing, not just in time, but minimizing to have the right kind of inventory so that you're not carrying so much. Work in progress is basically cash locked up, and you want to minimize that to the best you possibly can. And then designing for flow. On the left, you can see this is Stanford Escondido being built. It was a archi-structural project, concrete moment frame, fully glazed, moment frame, precast plank, 4 buildings built, and they're all sequenced. And there was a logic to it. It included kitting, which also brought materials into the building in a sequenced way that really started to improve and optimize the site movements. And in doing Stanford, this idea that, oh, did we miss an opportunity? And you can see a plank being dropped into Stanford, and it was the opportunity. It was the missing volumetric. Had we captured that, would have improved the overall delivery of the project. And here's that kind of observation on this is a build out of a project, a confidential project. And on the bottom, that arrow is really the build foundation coming out of ground. And then the vertical there is the build of the central core coming up through the building. And then the rest of the structure following suit. And there's an opportunity as those two arrows diverge. And there's your opportunity or a possible opportunity to bring more offsite, more manufacturing into the project to get those aligned. And then on the right is all of the interior work to complete the project. And you really want to look at that on a week by week basis so that you're actually moving your trades through the project in an organized, efficient way. And again, you know, where you can't operate on a week to week basis, again, those offer the opportunities to identify those moments to bring prefabrication to the project. And so then bringing this all together, the product ecosystem, we're going to configure really based upon design, our factory and associated facilities. So these are the assets that Clark Pacific owns. It's also the facilities that our partners own and what they can actually bring together. And that's the external and internal partners. And once we're configured in that commitment, then we can move to manufacturing. And then the logistics, bringing the materials efficiently to site, and then ultimately into a complete project. And so as a future state, the ambition around our product is effectively to be a design, manufacturer, builder. And that model delivers the effectiveness to deliver the vision of the product. And so at the end, what are the key priorities? And what I would offer is the takeaways. We really want to prioritize around people and interaction over processes and tools. We want to prioritize product viability and continuous improvement over a fixed basis of design. So that really is the versioning of a product. We want to prioritize collaboration and shared outcomes over contract negotiations. So that's really working with our MEP partners, our build partners, our GC partners, et cetera. We really want to be a collaborator. We want to be an integrator. We want to prioritize adaptability and outcomes over a comprehensive plan. We've all been there. We spend all this time planning projects only for something to unravel, and we're not prepared for that. So we really want to prioritize adaptability and outcomes. And then we want to set vision for a long view, prioritize opportunities to achieve alignment. And so those are kind of what I would say are our big takeaways and the learning the learning that I hope you can take away from my presentation. And with that, I'll offer up questions.
Great. Thank you, Greg. So yeah, either go off mute and ask a question or just put it in the chat and then we'll read it out.
It's lunchtime. Everybody's worn out.
Yeah. It is. And the breaks, I think when we do the next one, I think we'll spread it out a little bit because sometimes even 5 minutes, get an old 5 minutes and then only having 5-minute break. But here's a question. Are you all dealing with just housing? I think that's probably a question for everybody, not just.
Yeah, so in general, Clark Pacific has a number of prefabricated products and a long-term vision around them. So John Mole just presented on an office product. There's the parking garage product, which is Clark Park. There's Infinite Facade, which is effectively a facade system. And then in my specific case, we're really heavily focused on a housing product, housing being multifamily, transitional housing, student housing, and even venturing into hospitality, and really focused on hitting the value creation in those market sectors. There also is, again, within the emerging markets, there's still the intent to look at the one-off, Apple headquarter buildings, for example. But again, if you go back to that original diagram, in the history of Clark Pacific, we really want a sustainable manufacturing business. And so to the degree that we can make the manufacturing facility stable and producing a consistent volume of product, we're not, all out to find Apple headquarters buildings. We're actually all out to try to find those products, the office, the parking garage, the housing opportunities.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Landris. I don't know if that. Yes, he said. How does, here's a question from Randall. Great presentation, Greg. How does modularization process reduce the impact to communities and deal effectively with the realities of diminishing tradesmen available?
Yeah, so a couple things there. One from a just a construction speed. So we all accept that a construction project can be a fairly significant nuisance in a community, right? Particularly all of the activities going on site. And so, for example, Stanford, right, really had an accelerated build speed and shortened the duration of its delivery, and so there's a net positive. With regard to labor, the opportunity and probably the one thing that I will reference, the example was given to me by Ray Boff over at DPR. I would visit his factory in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was watching the guys run around in a factory building wall panels. And it was actually, a very hot, Crom was with me. It was a very hot Phoenix day outside, like a day that you never wanted to be working outdoors. But inside the factory, it was cool. They had big fans. They weren't hard hats. And, they were all standing up. There was no tape measures. It was just an overall better place to work. And I think that's, first and foremost, the opportunity with manufacturing is that it's a better place to work. And because you're constantly improving the better place to work, and you're always looking for continuous improvement, that the idea of labor coming into a factory is that over time, there's the opportunity to move up, that the processes will become more and more digitized, more and more sophisticated, and that there's a real career path of move within that construct. And that really, for me, is an important piece. And it was something that I witnessed when I was at WeWork, trying to build a construction company internal there. There was a decided difference. So previously I had a engineering firm, and I was recruiting from some of the best universities, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, San Diego. And they were no doubt very, very smart kids. But I will tell you what WeWork could attract, because it was understood or at least perceived as being cutting edge, game changing. There was really potential for career growth and acceleration. The difference in talent coming out of school that got attracted to WeWork was so radically different than my previous business of engineering around buildings. And I think that's really the opportunity, is to creating those environments where there's real growth. And within a manufacturing framework, there's real opportunity that people can come in, they can have a set of skills, they can mature those skills as things become more and more digitized. There's real growth to work up and operate and continuously grow within that environment.
Great. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's interesting, right? Like, and it's also now, like, at least here on the East Coast, I'm trying to, for instance, even build a house, and like, there's not enough people. Like, people aren't even getting back to me with quotes.
Yeah, no,
so like,
it's that, and then so many of these projects are now mega projects, and the transportation, the travel time back and forth. I'm mindful of LAX and how much labor is required to build LAX, and how much traffic that has created, right? And frankly, how much wasted time, right? Just for the labor getting there, right? How much wasted time, how much have they lost, in their life just getting to their job, to where it could be, you could be working in your own community, near your home, et cetera, just a better quality of life.
Yeah. It is, and I think it's definitely, it's one of those things, like, same thing I think with remote work, like, this modular stuff is coming. It's like, there's it's just more like how it's going to evolve over the next, I don't know, 10-20 years. Is maybe we got a couple of minutes here. I'm interested, unless somebody else has a question. So let's see first, is any other questions for Greg? Okay. So Greg, like, this prioritize collaboration and shared outcomes over contract negotiation. This is pretty much in every industry, I think, because the way that procurement works and everything. So like, what have you seen here when it comes to procurement contracts? How do we focus more on collaboration and shared outcomes?
Yeah, I think with regard to you want to, so how would I prioritize it? You really want to minimize the number of participants on a project, right? So you really want high quality partners that can really deliver, in the broadest of way, right? So you're prioritizing those strategic partners that are, really A-list type of characters, and always try to minimize the number of participants in that. And then two, really understanding what they bring to the table, and really support them being at strength, right? When you don't support them at being at strength, right, what inevitably happens, you get a really project management mindset in which everybody is managing risk. And what they do is they silo themselves, and it becomes a game of protection, right? And that really is, what happens in contract negotiation. If you start there too soon and you start having those conversations, people immediately go into their silo and they get very defensive. And so really trying to, create that environment of collaboration, hearing people's concerns, understanding their concerns, and really putting on a platform to deliver their best, right, is really around that prioritization of collaboration and shared outcomes.
Yeah, great. I think we have people coming back from breakout room 2. So maybe let's, in last, I guess, 10 minutes or so, what are some of the takeaways? Or if there are still some speakers here or anybody else, maybe share, something that you've learned today, either through chat or just going off mute. And let's just see, what are some of the takeaways, or maybe, what could we do next? Was this helpful, valuable?
No, John, I think the biggest takeaway for me is the recognition that there are other people out there thinking like we do. And I think that it's really important as industry professionals and leaders that we prophesize the value of the integration from other industries, what they've learned in productivity, and integrating that into our models and being persistent about it.
Mhm.
And I think these types of engagements really help to get, the word out there that it's possible. And the 100-year-old model that we've lived under is not what we're going to need in the future to meet the demands that are out there.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Randall. Yeah. What else?
Just something that came up for me was as we look at the prefab processes in a factory manufacturing context, that a lot of the agile principles that apply in QRM, quick response manufacturing, would also apply to the prefab side of the construction industry. So it's an interesting nexus that construction is fortunate to stand in.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you, John. Any other takeaways that you would like to share? I still don't know why my video is not, just goes by. Crom, what about you?
Oh, it's like drinking fine wine from a fire hose today. It's just a lot of good information. I was trying to switch back and forth between the two rooms, but I think it's really this thing about integration, and it doesn't matter if you integrate your products or you integrate people, or right. It's really how do you integrate the entire system end to end, and then setting a vision for everybody. And I think that's the common theme here, and having proven things that you do so that your information can flow and doesn't get stuck. In construction, decision making is a big thing. It's the thing that always get everybody stuck, and unraveling decisions causes most of the problems. So the challenge escalates when you're in manufacturing world where you need the answer early. So obviously the industry is shifting, but I think my takeaway today is I'm excited that a lot of people are doing this, and I think we can tie this together